Well, hello and welcome to our latest episode of Fast Talkers as we take a tour of the paddock and speak to some of those people in the know. And of course, when it comes to Formula One at the moment, we will be talking Ferrari. You have been warned. Let me introduce our panel. Let's start with Gianluca Gasparini. He's the editor-in-chief of Motorsport at Gazzetta dello Sport. Gianluca, I would imagine your Italian paper has been relatively busy of recent days.
Indeed so. We have seen up and downs from Ferrari during the years, but having seen in the last 2 or 3 years a good Ferrari, we didn't expect this down. And as you know, the fans are very hot here, and so we tried to understand what's happening and the roots of this crisis, which is a big crisis, and the way they are trying to fix some, big problem. Apart from the drivers, I guess nothing is working now. So they have in front of them Monza and Mugello, and they prayed, they thanks God for the empty circuit in Monza, because with the fans it would have been not a very nice experience if the race is like in Belgium, in Spa. But we had a lot of food for thoughts here at the newspaper, and trying to be constructive, but you have to be even very critical of the choices they did and the way they managed the last couple of years.
Okay, we will talk plenty more on that, I promise you. Let me introduce our next panelist. Dre Harrison is from Motorsport 101, and no secret, Dre, you are a Ferrari fan. How painful are these times if you're a Ferrari fan?
First of all, thanks for having me back. That's very pleasing to know that you guys liked enough of my Ferrari masochism the last time. Yeah, I mean, you don't know whether to laugh or cry. I mean, I've been a Ferrari fan for over 20 years, and look, I can't get too upset because, as the esteemed panel has already made out, we had a lot of good times too. So I guess this is just desserts. I guess, it goes up and down like that. But this was bad. This was real bad, and I'm sure we'll get into the nitty gritty in further detail shortly. But long story short, I can't remember the last time I've seen Ferrari so completely uncompetitive in a round in quite some time.
Well, coming up next from Germany is Bianca Garloff. She's the editorial director at Auto Bild Motorsport, and a beautiful image behind you of a Ferrari. How hard is it for a motorsport journalist to see Ferrari as they are currently?
Yeah, of course, it's very hard because as you said, you see the image behind me. One is Sebastian Vettel, if you can see, it's still at Red Bull times here, winning Red Bull times. The other one is Michael Schumacher winning in Ferrari. So you can see that I also have a kind of weakness for Vettel and Ferrari. And it's very difficult at the moment to watch races like Spa when they're fighting for 13th and 14th position. And in the free practice on Friday when Sebastian is last, I think, I don't want to remember that, but I think I have to remember it. Of course, you cannot be a journalist in Formula One at the moment without being critical about that. It hurts, but it's the truth.
So let's reflect on Spa, round 7 of the Formula One World Championship, and a circuit we all love, the drivers love. But Dre, there was no romance on the Sunday. It was, well, I'll let you describe it. In one word, what was the race?
Painful. To sum it up, if you wanted it in one word, I mean, there was a little bit of early hope. Charles Leclerc got a phenomenal start, managed to get himself, I think, +5 off the opening lap, had a great start, and they thought, okay, maybe there's a little bit of hope here. And then Pierre Gasly blasts through, Lando Norris goes through, and then Kimi Räikkönen is coming through and on the same power unit, and they're comfortably passing the factory team, which is probably the most alarming takeaway from the entire weekend. Ferrari, in terms of a power unit manufacturer, was stone dead last against their competitors. I think through qualifying, they had four of their cars are in the bottom six. And I remember for most of the race weekend, they were in the bottom of the field fighting with Williams and themselves, essentially, which I know Ferrari's been below par by their standards for pretty much all of the season, but this was comfortably the worst they've looked all year. Sebastian Vettel didn't spend a single lap in the top 10 of the entire race. That's how bad it was. And he was the higher of the finishing Ferraris on the day because they botched the strategy again. They had Leclerc come in during the safety car when he's screaming on the radio, don't box me. And it's another alarming observation that the drivers seem to have a better finger on the pulse as to what the situation is in a race than the team do. And we can go on about, well, and I'm sure we will go on about a lot of their problems as the episode rolls on, but nothing about Ferrari's weekend was positive. There was no positive to take away from this. It was just pain, and you know, you don't want to criticize them too hard, but this has been the culmination of a lot of poor decisions that I think has ultimately gotten us to this point. And when your star driver, the guy you signed the 5-year extension to, is complaining on the radio about wrong strategy calls, and he was completely anonymous outside of the first 3 laps of a Grand Prix and has to pass Grosjean on the final lap to finish, what was it, P13 or P14 in the end? You're a midfielder now. Like, this is Ferrari now. It's no longer the big three anymore. It's Mercs, it's Red Bull, and then it's everybody else.
How, Gianluca, from your point of view, how worrying is it that Mercedes have just keep on getting better, and the gap between them and everybody else now is just feels painfully big?
Mercedes is, and that's one of the difference that can explain the situation in Ferrari. Mercedes won the last 6 World Championship, both drivers and constructor, but they were not afraid to change a lot of things on the car, to change the engine, to follow some new ideas like DAS, and to risk. And that's what in Ferrari they didn't do for the last couple of years. They had some problems in aerodynamics and the feeling with the tires. And in 2 years, nothing changed. And one of the reasons we tried to write about it on the newspaper, and that's one of the trying to trace the roots of this crisis, is Mr. Marchionne was very present and very a lot of work in Ferrari, and he even went to the technical meetings in Formula One, and someone told me that he sashed arriva bene even. It says, don't talk, I talk. So it was very, very present. But the situation is, it is some magic trick saying that they don't need top designers at that level for the engine or for the car, and said, okay, it's like open the position to the young talent into the factory, but it didn't last. It was kind of illusion. And now we have Ferrari as a problem, a technical problem, and they don't know what to do, because the top designer, like, you know, they tried to lure their Adrian Newey, but they didn't succeed. But now what can you do? And so they have technical problems, people problems. They took, the colleague here said the decision they made on the strategy is not the first time. They had this problem all in all last year, 2 years ago, this year in particular, and the drivers, it happens a lot. They complain on the decision of the pit wall. So you have a number of problems, and it seems like not a big team in this moment. So you have to think in a different way and try to be humble and try to, you know, it's like to seek help. Bring there someone who knows what to do. When Michael Schumacher came and he started not to win immediately, Ross Brown, Rory Byrne, it was not something happening all of a sudden. They brought the good engineer, the good technician, the good designer, and then you win. It takes time, but then you win.
Yeah, Gianluca just said that Ferrari doesn't risk anything anymore. I think they risked too much last year, and maybe even the year before last year, because I mean, everybody knows that there has been the secret deal with the FIA about the engine, and I think they went over the limit last year, and now that's the punishment. So now they lost a lot of horsepower. So for me, that's the proof that they risked too much. And it's a shame that that happened, because they built a car which was built for this very strong engine. Now they have a very weak engine, and the car is not capable to drive as fast anymore, because the aero is not efficient. And if you look back when Enzo Ferrari was saying aerodynamics is something for people who can't build engines, well, they could last year, but obviously not inside the limits. Yeah, now you see the punishment, and obviously it will stay, or it will last until next year, because you can't improve the engine so much, only with these few tokens which you have. And I think they will suffer until the end of next year from that.
If I may, my term risk, it meant on the ideas. They were too conservative in the car, in the aerodynamics, and because probably they don't have the good ideas, so they stuck with what they know. And in the last day, from 2018 now, the car is the same. They didn't really change a lot. So it's like they are afraid to change, because they say, okay, we have, and the engine, the power unit, you had a good point, because they relied on it for a couple of years, maybe knowing that it could solve some big problems, but in that way you didn't work on what you needed to. So now we are in a situation where, obviously, for the agreement with FIA, they lost a lot of power indeed, and this is really highlights what were different last year. What it was really very big, this power unit issue, and they don't have anything else, aerodynamics, suspension, and other sector. They would have worked on it in a different way to improve, and that's bad. That's the situation now. We have a car which was dead last on Saturday morning, which is really a shame.
Yeah, and in a way, with this good engine from last year, they even triggered Mercedes to build an even better engine, because Mercedes somehow had to fight against that. And now you have a great power unit from Mercedes. I saw Andy Cowell last year, how he was sometimes really pissed off when he saw what Ferrari was doing. So he got pressure from his own bosses, so he had to build a better engine. And now, now you see what is happening with Mercedes. They are just flying away, and soon Lewis is going to have these 91 victories, which so far the Ferrari star Michael Schumacher had.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, that was the entire emphasis. That was Ferrari's ace in the hole for the last 2 years. It was their power unit. It's like, okay, we may not have Mercs in the corners, but we can certainly beat them on the straights. And a lot of these Tilke tracks have big straights these days, one, sometimes two. In the cases of places like Abu Dhabi, that was their signature trick. And once you lose that, we saw in places like Austria last year, their chassis wasn't as strong as Mercedes. So they could get away with it in certain places, but in other places, they were really, really struggling. Now that's gone. They haven't really got any other attribute of their car that is particularly strong compared to anyone else in the field. And that's, I think, one of the reasons they've been done in so hard.
The culture of Ferrari is something I wanted to talk to you guys about as well, because we hear a lot from Mercedes about, how Toto Wolff runs it and the people he has around him. And there's very much a culture of inclusion. I don't think there is that same culture at Ferrari. And I think sometimes there's more of a culture of fear. Bianca, have you always picked up on that as a trait that Ferrari have?
Yeah, I'm not sure if there's really the culture of fear, because Mattia Binotto is not really a bad guy or something like that. But my impression is that he's kind of alone at the top of the team, and that he needs much better advisors, and that he needs more people around him who help him to do his job. I think that's the big problem. Maybe there's a kind of fear from Camilleri or Elkan, but I can't judge that. But I just think that the job of a Ferrari team principal is too much for the shoulders for Mattia Binotto. He just needs more people around himself to help him, to support him. Formula One is very difficult also politically. I mean, you see how Toto Wolff is fighting and chasing him in his own press meetings. So you really need to be strong, and you need to have support. And my feeling is that Mattia does not have this support, that he really has to fight alone at the top of Ferrari.
Yeah, I think that's a very valid point. I think it's easy to forget Mattea's a technical guy. He was a big reason Ferrari were Mercedes' best challengers for the last couple of years before we got to this season. And now this difficulty has started. He's got to take accountability for the negatives that come with his job. And it's stacked up. It has stacked up a lot in the last few months. I mean, not only from a technical standpoint, from a political standpoint, the handshake agreement on the power units, he got blasted for. He's one of the few teams left that's challenging Racing Point's brake ducts, and the punishment that they got, the 15-point penalty they got for that. And they're going to get blasted on social media because this is the same. He was talking about wanting transparency, and yet you have a handshake agreement with the FIA about your engines that no one else can know about what's happened, and you're going out protecting your intellectual property, and now you can't. Now you want to call somebody else out for lack of transparency. It's going to tick some people off and rub people the wrong way. The handling of Sebastian Vettel wasn't great. He used the coronavirus as an excuse to release him from the team, even though Zach Brown leaked out on Sky Sports that they had a handshake agreement with Carlos Sainz back in December. So it was clear they had made their decision pretty much before, if not just after the season had ended in 2019, that Seb wasn't coming back. And that rubbed people the wrong way. And now their team has gone from a team that still won 3 Grand Prix last year to a team that will most likely, or if not definitely, go winless by the end of the year. It's a catastrophic downturn. You know, they are probably going to finish 5, maybe 6 places lower in the constructors than they did last year. That is an unprecedented downturn. Most F1 teams don't go through a sudden drop that big unless something cataclysmic happens. So Ferrari's got to take the brunt of a lot of this. Mattia is probably on his own out there. I think you made a valid point, Jen. I think there is a lot of fear. I think there is a lot of intimidation. I think there's a lot of expectation with Ferrari as the established big name brand that they are, probably the most iconic brand in the sport to begin with. And I don't think anybody really wants to see them fighting for minor points.
I don't agree on everything, because you have to remember we are Italian, so we are not. So if you if you manage a team like Toto Wolff, you can do it because there is a different kind of culture from the beginning and maturity. If you remember it, when Ferrari won a lot during the Schumacher era, it was it's like Jean Todt was like Robespierre. There was a kind of really a terror environment over there, because probably it was the way to have the people deliver. And now I agree with you totally that Mattia Binotto is pretty much alone in doing a lot of things, and he's alone on related to the outside and inside into the factory, because we are specialists in Italy. If something is wrong, just to position ourselves in a different situation compared to who's coming and who's happening next, and not fighting together to solve these problems. And on the outside, Ferrari was very strong in trying to keep his veto on for the new Concord agreement and something else, but they didn't fight about the possibility to develop the car during 2021 or 2020, which was important because you knew from the beginning that the car was bad. So they are in this situation. They kept the money for the future, and the veto on the technical decision or sporting decision or whatever. And you have a couple of years with a car which is absolutely hopeless. So it's like crossing a desert now. 2 years is really a lot of time if you go on having this kind of races like Spa. And I don't see a solution here, because you have the top of Ferrari, which is John Elkann and Luis Camilleri, and I don't see them so close to the racing environment. They have this idea that these luxury cars, they sell a lot of cars and it's good for Ferrari, and the races is not so important to sell the cars, which is the contrary of what Enzo Ferrari was thinking at the beginning of his adventure. So I don't know if it's not so important to win. Okay, we come back to win in 2022, which is not, you are not sure so far, but let's see what happens. But I don't see the top management so strong and so willing to come back. They don't give this idea.
For 2022, it will also not be easy to come back to the winning lane, because you have the budget cap. So you cannot just throw some hundreds millions of euros to the team and build a great car. You have the same money as everybody else. So for me, 2022 is also a very can become also a very difficult year because of that.
Mm-hmm.
For me, Mattia Binotto and the team that he had around him was a breath of fresh air. It was great to see and experience, and he's a genuinely very nice guy. But certainly in the UK, when it comes to, let's say, football teams we're talking about, there would be cries from the fans now, okay, we need a change at the top. So are the Tifosi, Gianluca, already saying, or have they been saying, that it's time for Mattia to go?
No, I don't think so, because probably for this reason. Mattia is not, he didn't do everything in the proper way, I suppose, because they are in a bad position now, but he's very honest and he is a good guy. So the people feel these qualities of him, but obviously, as in football, it's not enough to keep your place, at the top of Ferrari. They are trying to explain in some way, but it's not easy to go on for a couple of years trying to explain. They better to take some big decision, and they use the money they have, because this year 2020 they have money. It is not the budget cap in place right now, to bring some very good people at the team. Even I would say to think about everything, even the strategies. This guy is good. Rueda, they had a couple of good races a couple of years ago, but so far I see a big problem here. And I mean, the courage to risk is even the idea to bring someone back from IndyCar. I don't know. You choose someone who is very used to this kind of stuff, and you put him at the Ferrari pit wall. That's, for me, it's the courage that they miss so far.
I'm very active on Twitter, and you get a lot of fans' perspective like mine. And I think Jen's right to a degree in that it's very much like the football manager culture now. And I think in general in sports, there's more of a sack-happy culture than it was, 5 or 10 years ago, where it's now one bad year and you could be out. compared to back when I was growing up, where you would get a chance to ride through the adversity. You might get 2 or 3 years. I'm a Manchester United fan, so Alex Ferguson, he didn't have a winning team straight away most of the time either. But never have I seen people turn on a team boss on social media quicker than I've seen with Binotto. Now, I think some of that is instant gratification. I think some of that is fans reacting in the moment and, you know, taking their frustration out on their keyboards, and that's understandable to a degree, but I don't think changing the team boss right now is going to immediately fix their problems. When Ferrari's own chairman came out and said, we're thinking of 2022, we're probably not going to be back to winning ways for at least another year and a half. Well, that should be the indication that Ferrari's focus is going to be next April, when the development freeze is taken away for 2022 in their cars. Well, they're kind of stuck in this bed now. Whatever they had to agree with the FIA, this is what they've got, and then they're not going to magically turn this around overnight. So I'm already sitting down here bracing myself for a lot more pain between now and the next major regulation change, because that's probably what's going to happen. But as much as Matteo Binotto has not exactly done himself favors this year, I don't think this is all on him. And I think some of it has to come on the drivers, because the Vettel and Leclerc have had moments where they've not been as great as maybe advertised, particularly Sebastian. But, you know, there is more elements in it than play, and I don't think just sacking the boss is going to immediately fix things. It might make us feel a little bit happier on the inside if you're one of these frustrated Ferrari fans like I am, but I also know deep down in the grand scheme of things, there's a lot more to it than just the team principle at the moment.
Bianca?
Yeah, well, what I just was wondering is that normally I know the Italian media, that they are not very patient, that they put a lot of pressure on Ferrari. And I wonder why they're not doing that now. Maybe Gianluca, you can explain what is different from other times, because I remember in all the other years, even when they did not win the championship and only became second, there was a lot of pressure. Also from your newspaper. What has changed?
No. We put a lot of pressure on that. But just to tell you about an example, I wrote on Sunday night on the newspaper, and I put the pressure, in my opinion, on Elkann and Camilleri, not Binotto. Binotto is maybe made some mistakes, but it's not, for me, the main responsible of this situation. Okay, he can improve. He had no experience of it in principle. He come from a technical side, so it's like you don't find a Toto Wolff out of the box one day for the other. It's different. But for me, what they are missing are the top management, like it was Marchionne or even Montezemolo. Or Jean Todt or whatever, very strong people who went, they related to, Marchionne was speaking with Zizke, or the same of Kalenius now, and with Toto Wolff. So he had the real idea what was happening and what you needed to be competitive or to be politically strong. Now, Binotto is alone. So the pressure we put now was on the top management. And but if you saw the newspaper, it was like we said, the headline on Saturday, on Sunday, after Saturday, was a game with the word Spa, which was Sparita, Ferrari Sparita, which means Ferrari missing. Has gone nowhere.
Okay.
So it's like it was not welcomed in Maranello, a lot of this stuff. So I tell you, I got some phone calls on Sunday and Monday and today, this afternoon. So you know, it's not so easy going for them. But it's like you don't have to follow social media too much, because it's easy to say, oh, Binotto is here and there, but it's not easy to win and to come back in Formula One. It's a very competitive sport, and you need time. Maybe the main problem now is that they are doing nothing. Everything is like after Hungary, after Budapest, they said we did a kind of revolution, but it was nothing. It was the same people put in a different position, which it solved nothing, and the situation is worse than before.
Well, we're coming to the end of our time, so the last thing I want to ask you, Lewis Hamilton, just 2 wins away from Michael Schumacher's record. Bianca, is this something you ever thought we'd actually see, and how do you feel about it?
Oh, well, no, I really did not think that I would see something like that again, because I saw how Michael managed to do that. As you could see here, I was a big fan of him as well. And for me, he was the best driver ever. Okay, forget Ayrton Senna. Maybe he was even better, but he couldn't show in the end, unfortunately. But for me, I could not imagine that something like that ever happens again. But when Lewis started to win with Mercedes, and you could see that the Mercedes is dominating. Okay, there was one year when Nico was able to match Lewis' pace and also to win the championship. But in the end, then he was so exhausted that he left Formula One. So from 2016-17 onwards, you could feel that something is going on there. And I did an interview with Lewis. I think it was in 2015. It was an interview without words. So just showing something with the hands. And I asked him, how many titles do you want to get? And then he made this. So hope you can see, it's 8. So from then onwards, for me, it was clear, even though he never said it verbally, he wanted to get this record, and he wanted to match Michael. And so now it will be done, probably even in Mugello in Italy, the 1000th Grand Prix. So that will be very painful for Ferrari fans and for Michael fans. But Lewis is a great driver. He's showing that in every race now. He has deserved it, and records are there to be broken, all the guys say, so I would say that as well.
That sounds, Bianca, like a radio person's worst nightmare, when you have to do everything by hand signal and there's nothing said, because that would be a very quiet radio show. Gianluca, tell me, what do you think?
When Fangio had 5 World Championship and somebody was coming to 3, and we always said, no, it's impossible. 5 is too much. Nobody will. It's a different era. In the 50s was easier and whatever. And then Michael came to win 7 World Championship. And it seems at the moment something absolutely out of any possibility for the future. But it depends on the car, on the team, on the years you find. Lewis found a very, very good environment to develop even himself, apart from winning, and he improved so much during these past years that the sky is the limit, even if he's not so young. So you see, maybe I think this year he can win the 7th title, the 7th World Championship. And for the races it's maybe it's not in Mugello, but you never know. But during this year it will. The pole position, he has the record. For the races he will have the record. But it's a great driver, I have to say. I've seen a lot of drivers racing, and Michael was superb, but Lewis is a great champ, and I think he deserves this winning streak because of the personality developed during the years. What is doing this year for some social issues, it's not easy, because the Formula One is not. They don't forgive you if you think of something different, or if you expose yourself on these matters, on this subject. So it's a great champion. I guess he became a great man. So we can only see what happens, but the records are going to be beaten for sure.
Dre.
It's the greatest statistical run of form this sport's ever seen. Ever since the hybrid era began in 2014, he's pretty much averaged season ever since. And this is year 7 of the hybrid era, and he's still racking these up. At this point, he will ultimately retire as the greatest statistical driver we've ever seen, whether you want to debate how great he was compared to Schumacher, Fangio, Ayrton, and the others will rumble on till the end of time. But he's a monster. He's a statistical monster. There is no other way for it. I think he's now won over 50% of all the hybrid era races on the table since 2014. Like I have no reason to think he won't get 100 wins and 8 world titles at least by the time it's all said and done. There's no one that can touch him. I mentioned it on my last appearance. The one guy we were hoping for a title challenge was Valtteri Bottas, and probably not happening now. He's 2 races behind on points. He's 50 points back now, and he was already getting team orders during the race not to push on his teammate, which kind of says about the state of play at Mercedes right now. Look, I said it many times ago, we undervalued Nico Rosberg's presence in Formula One because he was the one person that could put him under pressure. Sebastian did a little bit here and there, but he was never able to see it through for an entire season. He's the greatest outlier we've ever seen in this sport, and it's the greatest car-driver combination, at least statistically, that we've ever seen. No one can touch him. Not even Michael at Ferrari has the numbers now that Lewis Hamilton does at Mercedes. And he could have retired after the McLaren era and he would have been one of the sport's greatest. He had 20 wins and a world title at McLaren. It's basically Kimi Räikkönen's career. And we love him on social media. He's gone to Mercedes and he's completely blown it out of the water now. He's going to have 3-digit wins. He's going to have 3-digit poles. He will probably beat Schumacher's championship count as well because the regulations aren't having a major change for another year and a half. So all hail Lewis Hamilton as far as I'm concerned. One of the very, 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 very best we've ever seen on any measure as far as I'm concerned.
Well, that's all we've got time for. Thank you so much to all of you for taking part in the show once again. 3 returning guests for the first time, to Gianluca, to Dre, to Bianca. I wish you safe passage and an enjoyable season, and I do apologise if Lewis Hamilton does end up equaling Schumacher's record at the 1000th race for Ferrari. It's a bit embarrassing, but it's highly likely, I'm afraid. Take care, guys. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jennie.
Thanks, Jen. Thanks for having us. Take care.